Christian Education, the Church in the 21st Century, a sociological evaluation and plan for Harvest Fellowship. The church has never been perfect. Even the early church became legalistic and overly philosophical at times. The medieval church was a disaster, and yet the church continued. The Reformation was a breath of fresh air. The priesthood of all believers was brought back, and yet it wasn't implemented very well. The Pietist movement brought us the quiet time, which revolutionized individual spiritual growth, as well as Bible study, which helped corporate spiritual growth. The church was on its way. By the 20th century, the Sunday school model was firmly established. A typical evangelical Bible-believing church had Sunday school before church, Sunday morning worship, Sunday evening worship, and Wednesday night prayer and preaching. Many churches threw in a meal at the Wednesday gathering. This model wasn't perfect, but it helped in a few areas. First, Christian education was being done. Sunday school was just that. It was a school where children and adults learned the basics and beyond, where memorization was encouraged, Bible literacy was promoted, and little fellowship was experienced. The two areas that it was weak in was fellowship and practicum. In Sunday school, the head was filled, but the heart and feet were lazy. Fortunately, with all the other services, especially if there was a meal on Wednesday, fellowship did take place in bits and pieces. Many churches had outreaches, so the feet, action, got some exercise too. In the 1980s, the church growth movement took over. If a church didn't adopt the new ideas, they became obsolete. The church growth movement started out with an emphasis on evangelism and brought some good ideas like don't embarrass first-time visitors, serve coffee and make people feel comfortable, and try to be a little more organized. But then it became a competition to see how many people they could get in the building. After the dust was settled, most churches had abandoned Sunday school, Sunday night worship, and Wednesday night worship. People were only gathering once a week for a light spiritual meal of topical preaching. Some of the churches saw a lack of fellowship and adopted small groups to fill the vacuum. Men's ministries, women's ministries, Awanas, and Bible studies sprung up. In the midst of all this change, Ralph Neighbors introduced the cell church model. He got it from Acts 2:46, 5:12, and 42 in Acts 20:20. In this model, the large group gathering on Sunday morning was maintained, but of equal importance was the house-to-house meeting during the week. The cell groups, later called life groups, consisted of 5 parts: conversational Bible study, prayer and ministry, fellowship, worship, and outreach. The 2 wings, Sunday service and life group, became the major tools for discipleship. The largest church in the world began with this model, David Youngie Cho in Seoul, Korea. Sunday morning, the people were experiencing the corporate worship dynamic that house churches lack. Some fellowship, corporate prayer, and serious expository Bible teaching. During the week, the people practiced deep fellowship, Bible study where participation was encouraged, an atmosphere conducive of ministering to each other with the spiritual gifts, and some outreach from time to time. The cell church model gives a 1-2 punch that brought wonderful spiritual growth to the individuals and congregation. Unfortunately, the cell church model morphed at times where the life groups switched to topical studies rather than conversational Bible studies, and it was seen as an option rather than a central part of the needed discipleship. After practicing the cell church model, what I call the life group model, for 30 years, I would like to offer my evaluation in light of the state of the local church in general. With the church growth movement, we lost fellowship, outreach, and Christian education. With the small groups, and even far more so with the life group model, we gained fellowship, discipleship, and practical ministry when the model is done right. One thing is still lacking is Christian education. As a professor at a Christian university, I have seen the biblical literacy plummet over the years with the students who predominantly come from Bible-believing churches. I attribute this to the church growth movement for the most part. I also think that the complete abandonment of the Sunday school model has had a negative impact on biblical literacy in the church. Over 100 years ago, children were educated in the Bible in school. Today, unless the kids go to Christian school or are homeschooled, they get very little Christian education. They don't have Bible verses memorized. They don't know the books of the Bible or the content, and they don't know how to verbalize good theology. We've come a long way from the medieval church, but we still need to grow. What can we do? The Sunday school model has its deficiencies, so we don't want to go back to that, even if we added all the extra services, but there might be something we can learn from that model. It seems to me that the life group model, cell church model, is the best model. But unless our kids are in Christian school or homeschooled, which is what I highly advocate due to the current school curriculum fiasco, they miss out on Christian education. Our adults have also missed out on basic Christian education. How can we excel in Christian education without abandoning or stultifying the life group contribution to discipleship? I believe by adding the Christian education component to our life group model, we solve most of the problems brought about by the church growth movement without hindering the success of the life group model. With the Christian education component, we offer classes for kids and adults that focus on the knowledge Christians need to grow in Christ and not be negatively influenced by the world. In the past, Christians have been familiar with the major parts of the Bible: the Pentateuch, historical books, wisdom and poetry books, prophets, Gospels, Acts, letters of Paul, general letters, and the book of Revelation. The Ten Commandments, the Apostles' Creed, basic doctrine, and ethics. With Christian education being offered Sunday mornings at 9 to 9:45 a.m. before Sunday morning worship, we can excel in education without hindering our other values. In our day and age, in the 21st century, we don't want to retreat. We want to continue following the biblical life group model while making sure our people's needs are being met to the best of our ability at this time in church history. Let's grow together. We want to help people follow Jesus and share him with others. So we're kicking off the Christian education this Sunday with the regular kids classes that have already been going on and 2 adult classes, parenting class, and as well as a new class, the doctrine of the Bible. How did we get our Bible? So we'll see you Sunday. God bless.